Okay, so I know I'm supposed to upload over the last couple weeks, and I do apologize for the delay. I had a couple lifestyle events that really needed addressing first before coming into this with a clear head. So, I'm sorry slash I love you guys. Here is a treat. You guys are gonna get a two-parter based off of the quarter and semis, and also the Champions Cup. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets.
Tucci-Zola, back to Baker, Baker with the fifth. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Blue Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I said earlier in the cold open, thank you for being with me with this delay. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. As for, I think the biggest thing that we need to address is that I think Super Rugby over the last quarterfinal and semi have been very lopsided, overtly so, I think, in my personal opinion. We'll go over that later as we go through the show, but I think overall, I would say while the quarterfinals in terms of audience has been insane, at least in person. I'm not sure what the ratings were over streaming and live broadcast, obviously, but it was good. The quality was well done. I think the quality of play was just so lopsided. I don't know what happened over the last 2 weeks that allowed this to occur, but I think it was just overtly, how should I say this? Um, Detrimental, I think, to the interest of the game, just given the fact that teams just collapsed that I thought really would be competitive, and teams that I really thought maybe wouldn't be as competitive or I favored to lose by like 10 points. Um, Per gambler's choice, you win and you lose some. Just kind of wet the bed, I guess is a politically correct advertiser friendly term that I can use. Overall, I definitely think that the final spoiler alert for all those who live under a rock, it's going to be the Chiefs and the Blues. I think will still remain interesting. I think both of those teams, obviously, Battle of the Bombay is going to be a great spectacle to see. I believe it's at Eden Park, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously the big home of New Zealand rugby. But overall, I think if you look at where the teams go, I think this either could be a very boom or bust game in terms of Super Rugby final standards. I really thought that if you put in, say, the Canes or say a Druid team or, I don't know, literally anyone else, that it may have been a little bit more uh I guess the word would it be innovative rather than iterative, at least narrative wise from a media standpoint, obviously, rather than what we got. I think that fans will still be happy regardless of the product, as long as the quality of play on the field is good and as close as I think it should be. But let's go through hindsight 2020 and look through some of the notes I picked up over the last 2 weeks. While I was able to watch a lot of the shows and write these notes on personally, I never got a chance to broadcast them. So if that gives you any indication of how my life has been going, there you go. Overall, I think just I think we'll start off with the Reds game versus the Chiefs. I really thought it was just sloppy play from both teams, especially from the Reds. I think it would be, you're looking at a 20% effort from the Reds, maybe an 80% effort from the Chiefs. I think overall both teams really came in really just out of whack. I definitely love the fact that they, the Chiefs at least, put in a lot of fire with their single shooter cover defense. I definitely think that they iterated a lot and refined a lot of what made the Canes defense so innovative this year to absolutely stifle and limit the Reds' attack. Obviously the Reds have a great back line. Everyone knows Tim Ryan, everyone knows Jock Campbell, but I would say this year more than any that the Reds team that we got in the quarterfinals just wasn't what I had expected a lot of this year. Obviously, a lot of the old heads have been out injured. We all know James O'Connor's been out. We all know that Lina has been okay. There are struggles at 10, losing Tate McDermott for what was it, almost 6 weeks due to suspension. It definitely hurt them. And obviously, their forward pack is going to be amazing. But, having a lot of their, I guess, talent balance on a very slippery head really hurt. And obviously, losing Harry Wilson, we can't forget him. The red scrum cap legend himself obviously will hurt this team. And I think it really showed. They just lacked a lot of consistency at breakdowns to really score these penalties. And I know Fraser McWright is that dude, but he's not the same guy when it comes to Harry Wilson's ability to just put his head in a dark place and just make a damn play. Um, I think Tom Lina really showed his inexperience in this game. Obviously looking at it, the Chiefs, obviously, for reasons I don't need to explain, have a ton of playoff experience. All these guys have been there, done that. They're veterans of the game. Clayton McMillan runs a great ship and a great organization. When you're looking at the Reds, they're a little bit, I'd say, experience deprived in that regard. Yes, they've beaten the Chiefs on home soil before many a time, and I think they really came in there hoping that that would be the case again. But the Chiefs just, they took over and ran the game, basically. Tom Lina, as a game manager, I really thought when he is in the game, he does okay. I prefer their other 10. I'm just blanking on what his name is now. Yeah, it's he was I would hate to say the word lackluster, but I guess that's really the only term I can really think of off the top of my head that really suits what Line has been. Over the last few weeks, he's looked very frantic rather than urgent. I think for all of my SDSU fans, we all know what that means. Uh Obviously, he's just not distributing the ball properly. He's taking a lot of time with his release, getting the ball out to his players, calling plays. Pass accuracy has been horrendous. I've seen balls over people's heads, at people's feet, hitting knees, hitting people when they're not even ready for the ball, not even knowing what the play is. So they're just running it straight. That's a problem. And I think that really hurt the Reds team that really thrives, obviously, in that back row and backline play. Um, he just seemed overly panicked. Now, don't get me wrong, the Chiefs' defense is definitely ferocious and very physical, and I do understand that. But as a 10, I would hope that you're a little bit more composed and can help manage your side that desperately needs you to play, especially with JOC still coming off of his injury and still coming off the bench. You need to put up for at least the 40 or 50 minutes to get him on the field. It definitely doesn't help, obviously, that the Reds' line speed was just not good, at least attacking wise and defensively. If you look at attacking wise, they weren't able to set up a lot of what Tate McDermott was trying to do. And obviously, as the captain, he's been there through good and bad. He's going to do his best. And he did. He really tried to get things going. But obviously, it cannot really be helped when the Chiefs are bullying you at the breakdown, definitely trying to get you as soon as that ball is out. Player IQ was amazing in that regard and just stopping the passes. And obviously, Lina not being much of a factor obviously didn't help as much as well. Um, just between that and Matt Fessler's throw ins, we're just not good. I don't know what happened. Matty Fessler has been one of the best, at least consistency wise, set piece players in the competition. I really thought that his throw-ins, his mauls, everything that he helps drive the Reds to do leads success somewhere in the scoring margin. And his throws in were obviously really not straight. But I think another thing was their release timing and accuracy was all off. I think he went too longer in his release with his lineout throws. I think his break foot at scrum time could have been a little bit better to help set up the Reds for better success. Obviously, the Chiefs have a penchant for being one of the best uh, set piece teams, especially at scrum time in the comp. I think that needs no explanation, but I think the Reds, who have been a dominant team in that regard, at least in the top 5 margins for many years prior, and still this year, have an option to at least remain competitive. And I think that they lost that very easily. And between losing set piece and losing your ability to manage your game and your attack, I think that really hurt them. I also think that Nottawa, okay, I'm going to put these for my visual companions. I'm going to throw this on as my thumbnail. Probably as well. I've actually, no, I probably shouldn't throw that on for the regular podcast one. But he was literally saved by frames worth of luck, fractions of a second. I think we all know what I'm talking about. That wild throw that he got into touch, that was insane. I really thought that he hit the line, but I'm not sure through what TMO voodoo they got on him, but he was able to get that pass out. And I have to admit, for a young kid to do that coming off of injury this year, that was amazing. That is definitely going to be one of the highlight plays of this year's competition, and I definitely think shows a lot to Nottawa's quality, being of the try machine that he's been since he's been back. As for the Brumbies versus the Landers, another really disappointing game. I really thought that the Landers would move ahead. You'll see in my superlative list in the coming weeks that they had a lot of hope, but I just think they haven't executed yet, and we don't know how long or for what timeline we're looking at in that regard. I think that the Landers just really defended too tight in the C gap area. They weren't really able to properly spread their defense out, and that caused easy hands down the line. Whether that's through Lonergan taking a snipe down the mid lane to set up a running Tom Wright, who we all know when he scampers, that man makes magic, and that happened. Or if you're looking at the Corey Toole try that he had in the corner. Well, proposed try. It's all with the same thing. You're all gapping most of your forwards and your backs into a C gap lane, hoping to just. I'm not sure if they wanted to fan them out and make quick adjustments. Maybe not. Who knows? But it just wasn't that great of a option in my personal opinion. Uh, I think most of the penalty goals by Milam via the Brumbies were just lost by breakdown in some way. Whether it was not dominating to hold your own ball, to get turnover ball. Rob Valentini really didn't do as much in that regard this game that I really thought he would. The Landers, for all intents and purposes, while a fiery team, definitely don't have a Rob Valentini level guy other than maybe Billy Harmon, who is not on the same caliber as him down the line. And when you look at it, it should have been very easy for this back row to really start ripping apart the Landers, and they just didn't do it. I think this was mostly saved in the game by the backs, but such is life. I also really thought that when the Brumbies got back to their double blockers that they're desperately known for when games start getting out of hand, obviously their back line is electric, and I think that comes from that. And also putting Lola Seal more in a managerial role rather than an effective attack role, which is what he's been normally over the last couple years. I think putting him in a pocket has really helped him develop as a player. Obviously, this can connect to whether it's football, basketball, really any sport. And obviously, that kind of composure can lead to a collapse of a team. And that's where really the collapse of the Landers started. Once it started getting back to what they know and do best, it really didn't end well for them. And that's what ended up happening. Ball is life, I guess. You're going to win some and you lose some. The Landers came in with what I could have thought they would have at least kept it tight within 7 points. Ended up getting blown out. He'll get better next year. I think uh, having better coaching staff would be huge. They definitely desperately need another, in my opinion, 10 in that regard. Don't get me wrong, Millam's great off the tee, and so is Sam Gilbert also. But I think they need another one to really manage the space well. Millam is a good choice. I think you just have to let him develop in that role rather than throw him into the fire like Carter Gordon, and you risk losing his confidence. And the rest of this team, I think, needs to get better, at least within the realms of lock play. They have a couple guys, mostly vets. They need younger players in that lineup, and that would probably be the biggest things for me for the Landers to work on. Obviously, having JRK kind of screw over a couple games has definitely hurt them. I definitely think they should have been higher up on those rankings if it wasn't for that. But like I said, you get back to it next year. As for Lolesio, I think this year he's been relatively impressive. I definitely think that his tour in France has definitely helped him work through a lot of the deficiencies he's had and the confidence issues he's had with the Wallabies, and he looks like a different player. My jury's still out on him, but perhaps he does better. Let's hope for that. As for the Canes game versus the Rebels, another game that I really thought the Rebels would have made a little bit more competitive and gone out in a blaze of glory. But unfortunately, this game was lopsided from the first minute out. I think a furious defense from the Rebs with flashes of excellent game management from Carter Gordon was great. Don't get me wrong. I think when this team is firing, they are one of the most dangerous teams to be playing against in the competition. It's sad to see them go, possibly. Hopefully down the road, they'll come back. We'll go over that in a future episode. But I think it's really hard to compete with the explosiveness of the Canes. Across the board, they have players that can take a whole field open try from the break. And, I would say maybe, just maybe, humor me here. The Rebs maybe have like I would say one guy, maybe in Lockie Anderson. You could maybe say Carter Gordon when he's on. That's really about it. I wouldn't say there's anyone else in this team that can really take it in the kind of explosive plays that the Canes are able to come up with, but they haven't been there for the Rebs all year. So that's really what helped tip the scales for them. I really think Harry Godfrey stepping up when Ruben Love was great. There's nothing more that I haven't said about Harry Godfrey that can't be said. Harry, my boy, you are a freak of nature. I think the def 50-22 kicks, uh, proper flat probing, and especially on defense, to take the licks you were getting from the Rebs, especially from Josh Kemeny, from let's see who else, Yusta, Lockie Anderson, you were taking some hits to get these sacrificial passes out, but those sacrificial passes ended in points. So I can't really complain. Godfrey, you're a freak. I think you sitting behind Ruben Love is a travesty. You need to be put somewhere. Throw you at 10 if they're not going to put Ruben Love at 10. Do something because this guy needs to see more minutes. He's wow. That's I'm speechless just because of how amazing that talent is on the Kane staff. I think Carter Gordon's real YOLO lobs. I think we all know what we're talking about here. Carter Gordon, especially throughout the competition, really has lacked, I think, the confidence and the uh, mileage on his body, I guess, in proper recovery to really do what he did in previous years, especially in his rookie year. I think, like I said, the Wallabies really killed his confidence. And I think that's why, cough, cough, spoiler alert, he's going to league. Uh, you could see a lot of it this year with these YOLO lobs. He's taking a pass, from maybe the hashes, and then trying to sling a skip, two, three people over to the edge. It ends up being too high. It goes over the guy's head, or if it doesn't, it's a hospital pass. It doesn't even get anywhere. And that's really been the modus operandum for Carter Gordon this year. Obviously, it has no real pop. They're really lofting. I think in this game, especially, they look like 2015 Peyton Manning. Can't feel my arms throwing the ball. It really needs to stop. That was tragic. You were at the current moment, I would say not the same player you probably could be. And the jury's still out for me personally, even with your move to league, that you'll even get back to that. So just stop it. Just please stop. No one wants to see some highlight reel in your expense. So given that, yeah. I definitely say that Rayasi is a freak, but his game management needs work. Obviously he's had controversy over the last couple of years, being off the ball averse, maybe perhaps. He hasn't been the greatest when it comes to defense, making business decisions, running support lines. I think this year he's done a lot better job with that. But his kicking, my dude, I understand what you're trying to do, but if no one else knows what you're doing and doesn't prepare for it from the beginning, it's a wasted opportunity. If you just kept the ball and took the easy passes, you would have had the Canes would have had like another 2 or 3 scores. And I think that's just something that you need to work on as a whole. I understand your team coming from the New Zealand Sevens head coach is very explosive, wants to hit the big play. But I think if we tone it down a little bit, Rayasi could be a game breaker and personally, in my opinion, should be starting on that wing if he gets those down. I definitely think the Rebels in the second half had a lot of opportunities, easy, especially opportunities, to make a statement, but I think they knocked their only shots. And on top of that, with pass accuracy, really killed them, along with the overcommitting D, which really just stayed too tight or shot up, allowed massive holes for obviously a very well trained and very well positioned Canes team to really succeed. They're drilled for this. They're like the old Crusaders. You make a little bit of a mess up, they're going to clean up, but they're going to clean you up as well. And that just ended up happening. I think that the switch really turned on at the 60th minute. They looked full flat ball offloading, vintage Rebels, back to when I loved watching them with the Matt Giddos of the world, the Billy Meeks of the world. They looked like hammers in that regard. But I think that they only had, 30 minutes of that the entire game. So not a lot can be said. I would say it's a game of where every second counts in this game, and the Rebs maybe got 30 minutes. Like I said, if you're being generous, you could say 40 at best, but if I shouldn't really have to explain this, but if you're in a game this tight where you're looking to at least remain competitive and take a bonus point loss, you're not gonna get that obviously playing the way you did, and I think that showed. I think it really had a phone booth fight mentality on both sides, but I think that obviously that mentality is gonna die out when you're not able to get any capitalization off of that, and it really showed. Um, it definitely made a feel good story narrative could have popped out, but just like the Rebs this season, it goes down in a big bed of flames, and unfortunately, that's all she wrote for this. As for the Blues, I really thought the Blues and Jura would have been another competitive game. I thought the Jura could possibly beat the Blues in Eden Park. They've done it before. I understand they're not in their home castle of Suva, but such is life. You have to make do on the biggest stage and arguably in Super Rugby at Eden Park. I would say outside of terrible defense by the Drua, allowing two opening tries early, the Blues have overall been stopped in this entire game. If you take away the explosive plays, the Drua really helped slow down a lot of the explosiveness. It was just too much banger bust in that regard. I definitely think that they had a reminiscent, I guess Dollar Tree 99-cent store ripped to them level of the box defense from the 2019 World Cup. For those of you who don't know, they basically just had a flat line with almost a cover defense mentality. And they use their wings and centers to basically shoot in diagonally into the line to stop open passes and kill the attack at the base. Obviously, that leads a massive hole on the edge. We saw that all game with the Drua, and they obviously didn't get the successful part for a majority of the game. Let's just say that the Bucks are able to do it because it's bang or bust. They just have a great defensive mentality. The Drew, on the other hand, could use a little bit of work. They definitely did a good job, though. I will have to prop them up on that to shut down Martelea and Caleb Clark from doing a lot of what they do best, which is obviously broken explosive plays. If you look at the playoffs, you have Martelea basically floundering out. If you take off a couple easy tries that he's assisted in, if most of these are going to Caleb Clark. And outside of that one from Pedofeta that went wide beautifully, might I say, uh, you take those out, they had an okay game. It was okay. It was just the Drew just let off too much explosive plays. I really thought that Kitone Salawa really kept them in the game with great turnover ball, great offensive physicality, and calling the defense well. When you have guys like that, Iosefo Masi, let's see, Celestino Ravu Taumanda, Tavita Incanaveri, you're going to have a great physical team that's going to be able to have a lot of spirit on that defense. And they had it in droves. I think they really held it up. Obviously, we all know with Fijians, though, they have a lot of explosive flame, but once they get tired or the penalties start happening, they get frustrated, things go wrong, and things really went wrong after the Ravu Tamanda roll with the two sextons to really put them in the perfect overlap to get a try. After that, they looked a little bit disheveled, a little bit maybe too fiery in that regard for this game, and had to kind of balance out in the last 20 minutes. No matter what, though, obviously, in a game that is decided by seconds, by meters, by the blow of a whistle, for 20 minutes, you couldn't get out of your own way. That's going to hurt you in every way down the line. And I think that the juror will need to take another long look in the mirror and see what they did wrong. I think that obviously this team is explosive. This team is my dark horse every year, one of them to win Super Rugby. But I think it could just be just a pipe dream at the moment for me. Perhaps I need to reevaluate my expectations of them. But I think they need to work on doing what they don't do best rather than refining what they do best. We all know them for the broken play, but we don't know them for the consistency. And that's what really hurt them. And it leads to another quarterfinal exit for them as well. As for my team of the week for the quarterfinals, I went with a kind of basic team. I tried to really keep this as grounded as possible. I do have a couple holes just because I really don't know who I could put in there properly, especially on the bench. But such is life. Let's go through it. For my front row, I have Sam Talakai, Alsafa Almua, and Olfatunga Fasi, just for the fact of just being great props, keeping leadership, keeping the play moving. In the case of Safa Almua, breaking the game, and Olfatunga Fasi just laying wood. The man is a menace. Sam Talakai, for being the old head that you are, coming in most of these games with 60 minutes left to run through because Nelo Tupo gets hurt or, Matt Gibbon goes down. The guy is a walking Swiss Army knife, and it's going to be sad to watch him retire at some point in the future. Um, he's a beast. As for my backs, my locks, I went with Justin Sangster and Josh Canham, just for the fact of disruption. If you're looking at defenders who are physical and also disrupted at the lineup and at offset piece play for the backs, both of them have been effective in that regard. As for my back row, I went with Peter Lakai. I have Salawa and Iose for my 6, 7, and 8. I think for obvious reasons, just basic back row culture. For 9 and 10, I have Tate McDermott and DMAC. I think if Tate McDermott obviously had a better team around him, this would not be a contest at all. But just doing what he could, I have to give it to him. DMAC, just being DMAC. I really can't say anything else. For my back three, I have Rayasi, Nadawa, and Godfrey for all the reasons I said above. They're just freaks of nature. When they're on, they're on. As for my 12 and 13, I put Adrian Justa and Anton Leonard Brown. Justa just for great defense, really setting the tone and helping hold that line for as long as he could throughout the game. Anton Leonard Brown, just for the fact that when he's on with DMAC, those two are a absolute menace around the edge, and they can create a lot of problems. I couldn't figure out who to put for my secondary hooker or my prop, but for my bench, I went with a 6-2 5-3 split. Actually, take that back. I went with Samasoni Tokiaho for the Chiefs for obvious reasons. That guy, when you feed him the ball, can do a lot of damage, especially in attrition. He's like the Adrian Peterson minus the explosiveness, just being able to pound people into submission. I again couldn't figure out another front rower, so let's go to the second row. I went with Tupovai, just great ball running, IQ skills, and obviously good at the breakdown, just holding the ball straight, keeping it together, and not allowing a turnover. As for my back row, I went with Rob Leota and Wallace Atiti. Satiti has been one of the game breakers this year, in my opinion, in terms of where he can go. I think the sky's the limit. He does everything right, and I really would love to see him in an all black jersey, maybe in the next 2 years. As for Rob Leota, it's gonna be sad to see him go. I really kind of had a soft part of my heart when he made his speech about the Rebels. It's going to be sad to see all the boys depart and go to other clubs. Hopefully, he makes it to another club. I think he'd be a great star. Leota really helped carry this team this year with the loss of Lukan Saikai Loto, just really holding it down in terms of the physicality, calling the defense, staying in there with all the head knocks, all the blood, breaking fingers, dislocating his shoulder. He did a great job. And I think he deserved a spot in there. It was between him and Josh Kemeny, and I had to put Rob Leota in there just for that reason alone. Leadership and experience trumps everything in my book, and he has that in droves. I would run through a wall for Rob Leota if you asked me to. As for my back three, obviously I went with Filippo Dungunu just because if you're looking at what he did when he could do it, whether it's physicality on defense, setting up great line breaks, just trying to get them over the line, Dungunu was always there. I also went with Jordy Barrett for this, again, for the simple reason that game management skills, putting people in the best position to succeed, and really being a menace when it comes to being on defense. You don't look at a former fullback and say, "Oh, that guy is definitely going to ruin my day when it comes to playing front football." No, you think of it as he's probably going to let you run through him. And instead, Jordy Barrett did a bunch of great things this year, and especially in this game, that helped set him apart as a true center. I think he's really embraced that position and done well in that regard. I can't do nothing more than hold up my hat for you. As for my 23, I had Sean Stevenson. Shawnee boy, we all know you're a freak. When you're on, you're on. It's sad to see you got hurt for this game and couldn't play in the semis. Spoiler alert for all those who live underneath a rock, but we'll hope to see you in the final. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back for our second part of this special. All right, everyone, welcome back. Let's go through the rest of the semis. Obviously, for 2 games, it's going to be a little bit shorter, but then we'll be able to discuss the rest of the news afterwards. And my personal favorite, the Champions Cup. As for the Blues, I really think it's god awful work by the Brumbies off a kickoff to really slide together solid play through one thing or another, usually mostly from the breakdown, whether it's allowing for a Blues person to get over the ball, collapsing mauls and being off sides and knocking the ball on. They just couldn't get out of their own way from the get-go, and it just was obvious that it wasn't going to work out. I think a lot of questionable forward passes from both ends. I really think that pass, while a highlight play to AJ Lamb on the edge, is not what I would consider, at least in my book, as a level one touch judge who refs youth. A questionable at minimum pass from Harry Plummer. Uh, as for the rest of the game, I think the Brumbies put tons of pressure, were unable to carry over the gain line. Just again, obvious reasons. If you can't hold on to the ball with ball security on both ends, offense and defense, and you can't slam through perfect passes that aren't through Tom Wright or off of a snipe from Lockie Lonergan, you're not going to go through with much effectiveness. If you're looking at it, the Brumbies are built two ways. They're built to score off of Rob Valentini, and they're built to really pound the ball through explosive plays, whether it's through uh, Corey Toole, Andy Muirhead, or the rest of those boys in the back row. And if you're not doing that, that team's not moving anywhere. And if you can't do that through non-security of the ball. So being that as it may, that's really what happened. I really thought the Brumbies continue to put backs in the center of their line. I really thought that was a dumb idea and not exactly winning with proper forward shift on defense. Left too many holes, whether it was allowing, say, for example, Andy Muirhead to be on the D gap and not really allowing him to kind of sweep around on the edge of the field where he's supposed to be covering, say, for example, a Mark Tolea, who we all know, don't get me wrong, breaks tackle breaks like candy. But when you're looking at it, he can at least slow him down, allow the Blues cover defense to really work. And I think allowing those little micro cracks in your defensive line, especially in key areas, allowed the Blues to really just go off when it came to attacking that. Also, they're shooting really in the try formation that normally they teach in youth that you don't do. For all those who don't know, in Southern California youth rugby, they basically tell you not to run in a try formation when you're coming in defense, to allow for pockets here and here, basically off of your B and C on your defensive side. And that's what they did. They didn't shoot up in a line, and that allowed for tons of breaks that the Blues went through like candy and obviously succeeded with. You really just can't do that at any level, especially with the pros, and especially against an explosive team like the Blues, because they will carve you up, and that they did. As for the Canes, I really thought this game was borderline tragic. I thought that the Canes would have had, I'm not going to say an easy win in the Capitol, but at least a serviceable attempt to get this game within 10 points to win plus or minus. And they came in this very flat-footed. They came in this off the ball without good mindset. I think they came in this a little too high maka for all my Hawaiian fans, but basically that means is they came in it too high-minded, and that led to a lot of problems. For starters, tons of handling errors throughout the entirety of the game, whether it's from Josh Morby, Peter Lockeye and friends. You had terrible handling. You had TJ Perenara, who wasn't the greatest when it came to managing the game, do a horrible job at points of setting up his team's attack for success. On top of that, on defense, when you're missing 13% of your 129 tackle attempts versus 11 from the Chiefs, you're going to hurt the game where margins matter. And in a game versus a good team like the Chiefs, this is where the margins do matter. Now, the Chiefs, don't get me wrong, I think from not only me, but from a lot of people, have been counted out this year for their deficiencies. They dropped off a cliff in my personal book in terms of standards of play. And if you take off the old heads, I really think that this Chiefs team would be a whole lot different side. But the Canes just didn't bring it. I think the Chiefs used a great attempt of their the Kane single shooter cover defense against them, and they had no second half adjustment to cover for it. And I think that really showed. They had no ability to get through broken play of attack, and the only time they did through Yose, what was it? Oh, I'll give you a big hint. It's called a forward pass. When you're playing frantic like that to set up your team, you're not going to go well. Billy Proctor definitely tried, but Billy Proctor can't do the rest of the game. I definitely think another thing that the Canes have to take advantage with is yellow cards. When you have a guy off the field, especially a guy like Luke Jacobson, why are you not capitalizing on this? Why? It just comes to management and form. Oh, Clark Laidlaw, I don't know what happened to your team, my boy. They just collapsed. I don't think it's coaching's fault. Partially is obviously, but I think it's mostly players on this end. They got taken advantage of. And if you can't take advantage of 14 men on the field with an explosive team like that, you got problems. And you had, despite, say, for example, conceding 7 instead of 9 penalties on the Chiefs end, with 2 of them being in the bin, you had opportunities to really open up this game. If you look at the opening score, yes, the end score was close, being down by 10 or 11 points, I believe. It was 30-19. But the Canes should have at least put up 15, minimum 9 at least off of that. I could at least take that, but no, they didn't really get much of anything, and that's disappointing. I think of any level of any team, especially an explosive team like that. I can't say it enough. Oh, it just hurt. But I think you need to definitely think about coming in with the right mentality. A lot of people will always say, "Don't count anyone out." Everyone can be an upset team. The best teams that come in normally get knocked off. Think of the underdog like they're going to beat you, and I don't think the Canes did that, as I've said earlier. I think they thought that it was going to be a relatively easy clinical game, with their explosiveness and the Chiefs' lack of form. I think that the Canes have brought the better scheme on offense and defense, but between the scheme adjustments that the Chiefs did, the quiet crowds, and the deft play of Etienne Seturo, they looked off and looked frantic. Cameron couldn't. When you have a team without really a true 10, a true complete 10, you have problems. As I've said before, Aiden Morgan is okay. I definitely think he's a better explosive player, but he doesn't nail it off the tees. Brett Cameron, better off the tees and off of game management with his boot. Not necessarily, I would say, the greatest explosive player when it comes to playing a 10. This is why I said Ruben Love and Harry Godfrey, but no. But you're gonna have to play explosive, and they played very frantic to play that explosive, and that led to their downfall. So we're gonna talk more about this in a later episode, but you need to do better, boys. As for the rest of this, let's move on to the team of the week for the semis. Obviously, with 4 teams, it's not going to be a very deep list, and of course, there are going to be a couple holes, most of them on my bench. But regardless, let's go through it. I definitely think from my front row, this is very easily earned. Ofatunga Fassi, Ricky Riccatelli, and Marcel Renata did a great job from the Blues. Their entire front row bullied it. Riccatelli's been on a tear through most of the playoffs. Ofatunga Fassi, same thing, been on a tear, especially at scrum time and really in offensive and defensive play. The guy's been reminiscent this year. Marcel Renata has done a great job at scrum time, really holding it down, and especially in defensive work at the breakdown. I'm so proud of you, my boy. You've come a long way since when I've watched you in 2017 to do what you did. This is probably one of your better performances, at least, of your career for this year. For my 4 and my 5, I went with Sam Derry and Isaiah Wako-Lioriri for basically just the reasons of disruption. Wako-Lioriri did a great job on defense, calling out defense, running great support lines, playing off the ball. A great job disrupting Atlanta, obviously, and good pushes. Sam Derry really just playing offensively good ball. He was a big effort when it comes to stopping Josh Morby on the wing. I think loading him up out there closer to the hashes, it was a good move by Vern Cotter and the Blues. And he was just a wall that I don't think they could run through. Yes, he's not the most explosive player, but he does what he does very well. As for my back row, I went with Wallace TD. I think for all of you who watched the game or haven't, go watch the game. There's tons of free streams out there. I think you need to watch this kid. He's gonna be in an all black jersey in the next 1 to 2 years. I went with Dalton Papali and Hoskins Tutu for the rest, just because they're kind of clinical. It's kind of hard to put up new reasons for them every week, but they just do what they're supposed to do very well and are very explosive. Their leadership, physicality, and ability to put their head in a dark place is outstanding, and they can continue to ball at this rate. For my 9 and my 10, I went with Cortez Latima, just for explosiveness and management of the game, just making it very clinical versus the Canes, which I thought was almost impossible because when TJ Perinar is on. And Harry Plummer for just wow. The guy's been a Swiss Army knife, just kind of like AJ Lamb throughout the rest of the year. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but just the overall ability to just not only probe, not only kick, just game management has been supreme from Harry Plummer all year. I really think putting him at 10 has been a good role for him to have, and hopefully he gets it back when Bowden comes back next year. As for my centers, 12 and 13, I went with AJ Lamb, the Swiss Army knife man himself, just for great defense, great ability to create turnovers, and on top of that, just being in the right place to succeed. Also, Anton Leonard Brown, again, for really just having that DMAC connection, I think is impossible to really separate from the rest. He's been a freak. Obviously, for right reasons, I had to put Stevie P in 15. So that moves out Itenenana Satudo, who would have been my 15 if Stevie P was in a different realm to 11 where he normally plays. Itenenana Satudo has been a unit this year when it comes to replacing Sean Stevenson when he's been hurt. And on top of that, just when he plays, I understand we're not going to get the same, the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years ago, where he's scoring 10, 15 tries a year. But when he is on, that guy is very hard to stop. His sidestep is still probably the best, if not one of the best in Super Rugby or in the world, really. And he needs to be on more stages than just a podcast this small. I went with Imoni in Ottawa for obvious reasons at 14, just because he's a try machine. We've all talked about this earlier. As for my bench, again, I neglected to find a lock replacement, in my personal opinion, that fit my standards. So 18 and 19 are basically going to be scratches. But for the rest of this team, I think it was really nice. Also, I did kind of forget to really find another back that also fit those standards as well. So being that as it may, let's just run through them. For my bench, I went with Alan Alatoa and Asafo Amua, just for clinicality, leadership. When they're both on the field, their ability to wreck the game is insane. Obviously, leadership is a great thing as well. Both of them are great at scrums and at set piece and off of defense. Very impressed. Again, couldn't find another prop to fit that standard, and couldn't find a lock to meet that standard. But as for my 2 loose forwards and 1 center, I went with Luke Jacobson, despite his yellow card, just because of the fact that his physicality really changed the game, and Quinn Tupaia, just because his turnover efficiency was really what sealed this game. He hasn't been the same player, I think, since coming off that first year where he got hurt by Darcy Swain. But when you're looking at the rest of this team and how they play, I can't really knock him for it. It's been a great year, at least in comeback wise, for Quinn Tupaia, and I hope that he only evolves from this better than ever. He just needs to get back that explosiveness capability. As for my 23, I put Ruben Love in. Just great game management, really held it down for the Canes where he could, and helped try to keep them in the game as much as he could. And that's really all I can ask for. As for the news, let's move on to better, happier things. Well, semi-tragic, but semi-happier things. We have the Champions Cup final. Now, I know I understood. I tried to put a little bit of an emphasis on trying to get the Premiership going, but for obvious reasons, we want to get paid in ad dollars. Not a lot of ads are on a small podcast. So I am not going to try to pay up for TRN streaming rights, especially with my beef with them over the Premiership. So given that, I wasn't just going to give you a whole season of Premiership with just highlights. So, but just being with the ability to watch the URC a little bit when I could, and the Championships Cup, I think this game was fantastic. I think Toulouse and their counter skills really saved them a lot this game, forcing a lot of slow ball on both ends. Uh, Leinster just really couldn't keep up. I really think Chocobaras coming in at the 30-minute mark early, I think changed the game with really pounding defense. They kept going at Chocobaras. I don't know what you're thinking is going to change. The definition of insanity is doing things over and over and over again and expecting something different to happen. And Chocobaras either took the ball, lit up that guy to the point where he was knocked out, at least maybe not literally unconscious, but the brains were definitely on for the rest of the game, uh, or taking a beautiful score. What are you gonna do? I don't know. That's just me. But he's just never letting up, and obviously the deft passing when asked, writing great support lines, I think was huge. As for Leinster, I really think their slow sliding cover really never really worked. The red tide speed, especially on the width, really, really blew them away. Obviously Ireland's getting into the more, I guess you could say, explosive. They're building off of what the Box normally do and what Joe Schmidt is known for in his Ireland tenure, but it is not fast enough because the French are here to play and they don't care. This whole team was just out for blood, I think, this entire game, especially with Anton Dupont in there. And on top of that, they left, I think, one of their best players in Tomas Ramos on the bench. And to have that kind of finisher, especially off the tee, it was a bad day. It was just a bad day. Um, they also, I think, with Leinster, if you look at it, they never really ran together, especially after the 30th minute mark with Chocobars in a pod. And that led to a lot of turnovers just because they looked to be strangling themselves with self-inflicted injuries, whether it was pass accuracy, panicked passes. Obviously, like I said, running alone really hurt them. Both cards, I think, were very cynical when it came to how they were done. I think this was just a very frustrated team that really just looked into how they could inflict as much damage rather than how they could inflict as much clinical hurt on the team as possible. But I definitely think it was a legendary game compared to last year's offering of Leinster versus La Rochelle. I love this game a lot more. This is a kind of physical rugby I want to see. Perhaps I'll give the URC a little bit more of a shot and kind of give them some love next year. I think this may have opened my eyes to that. And especially if it's going to stay on flow, I should give it a little bit more effort as long as the games are relatively early. For all those who don't know, I'm based in the West Coast of California. Obviously, the games are not going to be at a reasonable time, and they're usually at what, 6, 7 a.m., maybe earlier. Probably not the greatest idea. Oh, I seem to have lost my camera. Hold on. Sorry about that. Well, here, as I was saying again, uh, I need to give it more of a shot, and as long as the games are within a reasonable time frame, I'll continue to do that. So we'll hope for that. As for the rest of this, I just had a couple things to really knock into before closing out this show. We had the recent announcement that Carter Gordon's going to league. I really think that was fantastic. He's going to go to I believe, the Gold Coast Titans, who are not really the greatest league team. I personally am a Warriors fan and kind of a Brisbane Broncos fan, but uh I think they scored the trade of the offseason, at least so far. I know that I said I would cover more league this year. Perhaps I would give it more of an effort. It just depends on how I feel, just given how packed already this podcast kind of is from week to week and my prep for it. I think it's obviously a big loss for Union. I really don't know where the Wallabies are going to go. Perhaps they're going to go back to JOC. Perhaps they call Quade Cooper in for a little bit of love and try to rekindle that relationship that really Dave Rennie and kind of Eddie Jones kind of squandered in that regard. Maybe they go for Ben Donaldson and not have him at 15, but then that hurts your 15. So really, who you're going to go to? Jock Campbell? I don't know. They really screwed for the Lions test, I think, this year, and it's going to show deeply that the Lions are just going to blow them away. I really think this. It's kind of glad, I guess, in that way that I am not going anymore to the Lions tour for them and just going to wait for them to go to either New Zealand or South Africa, just because this is not going to be a good set. I think I'll probably only watch for content, obviously, and for the Anzac. I really have no clue where he's going to suit up or when, given the mileage he sustained this year and the lack of confidence. Don't get me wrong. If he can get confident and competent, I think he can be a great 6 or 7. kind of that Sean Johnson role in his older age. But if he can get really going, league with the amount of space that he gets is going to be filthy. It would be great to see him return to his prominence. Speaking of league, Coach 80, I'm not sure if you're watching or any of the Mongrel boys, up the boys. I know this year's not been the greatest for you guys in that regard, but you guys are keep perpetuating the league really on the West Coast, and I can't really have nothing but congratulations for you on that. For all those who don't know, the PCRL or Pacific Coast Rugby League is run by my coach 80, and they managed to secure a huge opportunity with the NRL in securing a Roosters pathway through an academy in Los Angeles and a great partnership. I think that having the connections they made in Vegas was huge. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, boys, but you know, retirement's retirement. But as for that, just looking at where further opportunities, whether it's for guys who are looking to get out of union or otherwise, just the opportunities for league, I think in the States have never been better. And I cannot say any more than I am so happy for you guys to really be in the best place possible to succeed. You guys have earned it, and I think the Roosters are only the first stop in a great, great journey for league in the U.S. Um, Unfortunately, also as for a little bit of tragic news, we do have the loss of Connor Garden Bashop being kind of prevalent in the mind of the last couple days this year. If you're looking at Connor Garden Bashop, he was a great player. You're looking at probably one of the better young wingers in Super Rugby. I would argue he was pushing for an all black jersey for the last couple years, just given the fact of how explosive he's been. And it's kind of sad to see him go. It's a huge loss for not only the Landers, but rugby in general. It hasn't been said what his cause of death other than a medical event. Obviously, I think they're trying to keep it private as things come out. Being as young as he was in 25, being my age, really, it's kind of, I think, a very hard thing to take for a lot of people. For those of you who went to Auckland to play, we got to see him play in a good capacity, and to know that he's gone is really sad. For all those who really want to put conspiracies kind of about the vaccine and COVID and all that other bogusness, come on, guys, we need to stop that. It's probably not the greatest place to do it. And obviously, if you're gonna do it on your own. Don't put it in a public forum. But times we live in nowadays are what they are. But being that as it may, let's end it on a happier note. Hopefully we'll see you guys next week, where I'll be discussing not only the final but also some more things as well. And I'll see you next week. See ya. Peace.